Welcome to the Inner Wonder. I'm Alex and I'm your host.
Hi, thinkers. Today with us we have Amrit. Um, Amrit has gone through an entrepreneurial transformational journey. I would describe it, but I will let him give us a little bit his definition of his journey um, to now leading a business model around a franchisee business model around home care and care. So, but before we dive deep into the business and all that you do, I wanted to understand a little bit about if I was to, I'm ready if I was to remove your CV from you, your biography, and ask you, who are you? Then what would you say?
That's a really big question. I wasn't prepared for this. I might need a box of tissues and who am I? I'm the son of immigrants that came over to the UK in the 60s and 70s. I'm a dad of three children, three very young children. So I'm at startup stage there as well. I'm a husband to my wife, and yeah, it's for me. I think all of those kind of job roles really are a collection of definitions for me. Um, I'm also somebody that wants to change where my direction of travel from where it was set out from childhood. I was brought up in a very kind of very immigrant heavy area, and thinking about sort of private schools and thinking about friends in that kind of circle and professional careers. I mean, it was a bit of a reach, quite frankly. And I'm somebody that wanted to change that. I wanted to change that for me. I wanted to change that for my family moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I think hopefully that is a pinned down enough answer to your very philosophical question.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So change. I think um, oftentimes we see our situation that we are in, and we like seek for something better, right? And to get to something better, oftentimes we need to get through uncomfortable situations, which is funnily enough how I view it is that sometimes you're you might be in a situation that you don't like, but it's also a bit of a comfort
Mhm.
situation, even if it's a bad one. So in order to get to a situation that it's way better, or that's something that we really envision, we need to kind of get uncomfortable, and it feels like we're going a bit down before we go up. So I was just curious, how was that for you, or like how was your journey towards your change?
I think you've summed it up so nicely, Alex. Where you get comfortable, that's a kiss of death, I think, and it's really about making sure that you are uncomfortable at all of the stages, and that will force you into growth. And it's either that will tell you where your limits are. So one or the other. I, for one, I don't believe in limitation. I just believe that I need to learn, or I need to surround myself with new people, better people that can keep going. So at various stages of my journey, that has happened to me. I'll tell you about the sort of last big transition going from franchisee to franchisor, where that happened. I was a franchisee of a home care brand. I was, doing pretty well. I was working kind of 3 days a week and earning from some pretty decent money, and being able to leave the business and go on holidays for 4 weeks at a time. And I came home and I'd said to my new wife, not that I've had many wives, just we were newly married. I say to my wife, I said, "Look, Trishna, I'm going to sell this business, and I'm going to start my own franchising operation." My wife is very um, understanding. She's been with me through lots of change, and so she knows. Well, okay, so he's saying he wants to do this, so he's going to do it. Let me just understand why, and maybe I can kind of coach the decision making. And she said, "Well, okay, so
Right.
you're earning some pretty decent money over here, and life's some kind of plug and play. Who's going to buy a franchise from you?" And I was like, "I don't know." right? But I do know that I need to do this, and I'm too relaxed, and I'm too young to be relaxed, frankly, right? And I've got, if I screw it up, or if it doesn't work, I can go off and do the next thing, or I can come back and do this. And she said, oh, look, sometimes things have got magic, and it's that magic that you've got right now, and it's working. And I remember having this conversation with her where I said, it's not magic, it's bloody
Mm,
hard work. And I've put a shift in, I've done the work, and I'll do it again. And for me, I think that's really what it comes down to. I think you really got to make yourself uncomfortable, and if you find yourself comfortable, do the next thing. When it's a franchisee, I'll tell them, make the next big hire before you need that hire, because then you'll work damn hard to pay for that hire. Or if it's as an entrepreneur and you're thinking, well, okay, or you're not quite an entrepreneur yet, and I'm still working, and I meet lots of different people at the moment that are in jobs and thinking, well, okay, I'm earning good money, I'm paying for my mortgage, great, but I'm interested in starting a business. I'm like, well, make the leap. You'll never know unless you make the leap.
right, right. And I really like the word I need to do it. The phrase where you said I need to do it, because it feels like, as much as life looked good at that moment, right, as you described it, um, you felt that you had to get to this uncomfortable situation again because you yourself wanted to grow again.
Yeah, I think the
And
worst thing is living with regret. So
right,
failure is okay, because failure is just the next stage of learning, right? I think we
right,
make too much of a big thing about failure. It's okay to fail. It's okay to screw everything up. It's okay to lose a bunch of money on that next deal. It's all right, as long as you learn from it and you move on. I say this to new members of my staff. I've taken on some guys recently that are a younger crew in that marketing space. And they're like, oh, well, what if I get this wrong? Great, good. Because if you get it wrong, number one, you're not going to get it wrong twice. And number two, we'll know. So let's just run, do it, fail
right,
fast, move on to the next thing tomorrow. End of story. There's no point dwelling on it. We just learn, we keep moving.
right, right. And how important it is to have, um, I mean, firstly, the mindset that you have, right? Which I'm curious to understand a little bit whether, um, you always had that mindset even from like a child, or how did you develop this mindset for growth, for change, for development? Um, but also how important it is to have those people around you, like you mentioned, that your wife was there for you to, in a way, coach your excitement, not to put you down, not to tell you anything, to support you, but coach a little bit your excitement and see where you're heading. So that's very important.
It's tremendously important. I think going in reverse, I think the people you surround yourself with are extremely
Mm,
important. Along the way, I've let friends of mine go because actually, my life was going in a different direction, and my positivity is X, and they're not really the right people around me. And some people might find that's quite cutthroat, but for me, I just think, look, you are a collection of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with people that want to achieve, that want to win, that want to be happy, you're more likely
mhm,
to be in that space. That's not for everyone. That's just me personally. I'm really conscious of that. I'm conscious of negativity because I find it's like kind of quite cancerous. And negativity spreads amongst you, team,
sure,
and so on. So if I find it, in my team, I'm like, great, let's sit you guys down. You and you have an issue. Are you going to sort it out amongst yourselves? Do we need to talk about this together? What are we doing? How do we fix this today? Right. So I think who you surround yourself with is really important. I think, for me, my wife has been an integral part of my journey, because
right,
she's the one that told me to get into home care in the first instance. And, she's been very kind of supportive. I think when I'm meeting prospective franchisees, I want to know who the cast of characters are in their life. And I want to meet them often. because actually, if you don't have a supportive unit, it is much harder to succeed. First point, or sack off the whole unit and just be on your own. They're your kind of two options, right? And then I think the question that you had, Alex, was where did that come from? And I think, again, being part of an immigrant family, you see entrepreneurs because that is all they can do. They can't necessarily get into those professions. Certainly in my situations, they really couldn't. And so therefore it was grow and scale. They had to become entrepreneurs. They wouldn't have called themselves entrepreneurs. They were just trying to survive. So, but I saw that, I learned from it. I thought, okay, well, this is good. That isn't, I want to do more of this, actually have better cash flow over there, or whatever it might have been. And my dad was a real inspiration growing up. And I remember when I was 11 years old, he gives me this book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Slightly heavy for an 11-year-old. Frankly, I look at my 11-year-old nephews now, I'm like, I wouldn't. But that and a few other texts along the way that really changed the way I thought and helped me expand this growth mindset. And then from there, I was really interested. And, my early mentors were my dad, but then, a collection of these authors. And then, as I kind of moved on, when I was at university, YouTube became a thing, and I'd learn from YouTube. And I'd test things, and I got into little businesses and whatever. And then as I kind of moved on, podcasts became a thing, and I gleaned from that. And, now I'll go and I'll actually very, ego at the door. I'll say to franchisors that are years ahead of me, great, please, can I speak to you? Can I take you out for a coffee? Can I learn from you? And I'm, even people in my own space, and actually some of them have been so giving with their time to say, hey, Amrit, look, I'm 20 years ahead of you. I did this, don't do that, do this because X. And I'm like, even though on paper you're a competitor, you're willing to give, but often you've got to be willing to ask and actually say, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen to you. And sometimes people in your own space are the best people to learn. But I think having that growth mindset, there's nothing like it. So, I mean, if you don't have that, you will hit a ceiling. And if you want to push past that ceiling, you have to be willing to keep on learning and keep on getting uncomfortable.
Yes, 100%. And one thing that I like hearing from you is that you connect growth mindset with learning rather than achievements, right? Because for you, and this sounds very healthy, how you grow is by learning more, right? And that actually helps you to grow more, rather than thinking of like to grow means I need to, I don't know, get to 100K, get to 200K, get to 1 million, get to etc., etc., etc. It's more about let me learn, and then more I learn, I put in the hard work that you also mentioned, super vital. I have the right people around me. I keep on learning, and thus I have the growth mindset. And those are important pillars
Yeah, I
into
mean,
the
I
growth.
think to add to that, over the last 4 years, I've started really making proper hires around me,
Mm,
and serious hires, and actually that has been quite fundamental in change, because what I've learned is that, well, actually, they are better than me at their space, and so that's an uncomfortable thing for a founder entrepreneur, right? You've got to make
mm,
your peace with that. To say, well, okay, this person who I'm paying X to is advising me on Y, and they are better than me at that. How do I feel about that? A lot of entrepreneurs will hire, if they're a sort of A player, they might hire a B player. If they're a B player, they'll hire C player around
mm,
them because they want to feel like a leader. And the thing I often say is, look, I can either, do I want to be right or do I want to win? And I think that's the thing, right? I think there's, you've got to understand that your scale will come in lots, a collection of amazing minds together, and you'll form something really interesting. And giving those people space to think, to be candid with okay, Amrit, hold on, you smell, you know, And that's okay to say. And it's saying, well, okay, do I get to know you well enough? It's that kind of radical candor piece by Kim Scott, ex Google. And you really look at that and you think, gosh, do I get to know these people well enough for them to be honest with me? And that's the dream.
Mhm.
And can I be honest with them to say, well, this was great, that wasn't. This is, something that I think you could be better at. And therefore you then become a leader, because you're not the person that knows all the answers, but you are the person that can glean all of the information, pivot that around in your mind, think this is the direction of travel, given all the information I have. That for me is that leadership.
That reminds me. I had a conversation recently with one leader in an organization, and he mentioned that his most valuable like member of his team is the one that makes him the most uncomfortable, because he is there to really challenge him, and it might seem from the outside that they don't really get along, but is the person that helps him to be to think outside of his own brain, to challenge him, to question him, to you know put it all out there. And at the end of the day, it's not about being right; it's about
Yeah.
winning, as
Yeah.
as you said. So
And I've got a couple of people like that around me but I do like them. I think for me, I've worked with people that were really good that I didn't like, and I think it's much more fun when you're working with people that are just really
yeah.
honest and you like. So,
Yeah, no. I think it appears they don't like each other. I think they
yeah,
do, but it's just
and I
like
have someone that works for me at the moment, or he works with me. It's technically a consultant, but we work so closely together, and he's kind of mentored and coached me as well. And it's really interesting because he'll just be super honest. And then, recently asked me, look, if you ever want me to just kind of rein it in a bit, just say that. And I was like, look, this is what I'm paying. This
right.
has tremendous value, because, as an owner, CEO, founder, whatever the heck you want to call it, sometimes people won't tell you that, hey, you've got tomato ketchup on your shirt, because don't want to tell him. You're gonna get
Mm,
upset. What does that mean for me? Whereas with me, I really want the honesty. If something is crap, please say. I'm doing something wrong, please say. One of the best moments I had this year was when we do EOS traction, and we're in one of our traction meetings, planning it. I was like, everyone's doing their thing. I had like a really generic kind of to-do item, which is my rock for the course, which is make sure everyone else has kind of done it, have my meeting. And one of my senior team sort of stands up and says, look, Amrit, so it's great. But surely that's kind of just part of the day job. And there's this thing over here that really is a problem and needs fixing. And you're really best place to fix that. And he was, really challenged me, and there was a bit of silence in the room. And I was like, thank you. Great. You are right. I need to do that. And I need to do that right now. And so that isn't something that's going to wait the quarter. I need to do that this week. I need to, leave this meeting and go do that. You are right. And that is the candor you want with your team, because of that, it set me up on a 3-month path into a different direction. And it means that we're able to keep growing and keep moving. But also, it demonstrates to the rest of the team, I appreciate honesty. It's not just BS. I'm not just saying it. I hope.
No, that's very valuable, and also says a lot about you that you're able to accept it in a way, right? And be able to be humble enough to 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 know that that's what you have to do to win, right? Which is clever and humble at the same time. So no, that's great. And also, Amrit, I want to ask you, like in your specific um business industry, right? You, as the franchisor franchisee relationship sometimes, you know, can be tricky, can be challenging, right? And I think you mentioned how you also want people to challenge you and to, how do you manage that relationship? How do you, because at the end of the day, uh, oftentimes it might feel a bit conflicting, but at the end of the day, the more you both grow, it helps both of you, right? Um, but how does it work for you?
I think, certainly for me in my organization, the way I feel about it is you can't be good and not nice at the same time, right?
Mm.
So I think having nice, decent people, and by nice I don't mean someone telling me I smell nice, but someone that is fundamentally respectful.
Mm.
I think that's really important, which means that then, if Alex, we're working together and you said something to me about the way that I'm dealing with a situation or a member of staff, or wherever it might be, there is a way of delivering that information where I both hear it and deal with it, but also that it's been delivered in a kind of respectful, productive way, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
the other. I could sit here and say, well, Alex, actually, I think you should wear a shirt on the podcast because of the
Mm-hmm.
fact that maybe you should come in a black tie or whatever it is, because actually it doesn't look the professional. I can either say that information to you in a really coarse way and neg you and kind of make it inflammatory and try to upset you, or I can talk about viewers and, hey, look, you're talking to this group over here, and they really dress like this, and I think you would resonate with them more by doing that. It's the same thing, but I'm delivering the information in a different way. And I think that having that candid conversation is really important, but also when you get uncomfortable situation, I've got something that happened recently that is an uncomfortable situation. And so I'm getting out with a member of staff, spending some time with them and saying, hey, look, this is what happened. This is how I would have wanted the situation to go, and this is how it did go. So how do we move forward from here? Now that the whole thing is completely cool, right? Yeah, it's all fine. It's
Mm-hmm.
past. It's done. It's cool. We're both in a good place again. But for the next one, how do you want me to talk to you? How do I want you to talk to me? Let's learn from this, right? Those contracting questions are really important. I've started doing that with people that I hire straight off the bat, just to say, well, how do you want uncomfortable situations dealt with? How do you want me to deliver that information?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I want it delivered to me?
Right. So respect for you sounds to be very fundamental in the relationship, right? In how
It's,
they.
both ways. It's not just towards
Mhm.
me. It's me towards them.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I've got someone, I've got people that work for me that are in their early 20s, 22, 23 years old. And I think, and I'm really honest. I think you're really great. And so age isn't a thing. It's not like, just because that person's in their early 20s and this might be their first job, that I don't respect their opinion more. In fact, I'm going to them for advice on certain things because I'm like, well, you're better than anyone else I hire for this piece of things. So you tell me what's what. But I think the respect needs to flow both ways. And if it's not, then that's not respect. It's just fear if it flows just towards me, right? And that's a horrible, horrible space because no one's going to be honest in that space, right?
Correct. 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 Um, Amrit, you as a person, as we discussed, very with a growth mindset. You always have your motivation high to learn, to develop. How do you make sure that your team has this kind of dynamic, right? Of course, one could be, self-selection. Like, who do you select to work in your organization? But of course, at times you might see, people either struggling with their motivation or, feeling like they're just like comfortable. How do you like handle or deal with the situation? How do you help the people grow?
It's a really good question, Alex, and I think that's an ongoing piece of work. I think as we grow, yeah, one of the things that even on a small scale, we have budget for learning for the team, but also as we grow, that budget will just increase. I think if you are investing long term in people, they will invest long term in you. So there's that part of it, and saying, well, okay, what are you interested in? What are you really great at? What are you a grade D at? Because, well, let's just sack that off and give that to someone else. What are you a grade B at? We can get that to an A, right? Yeah. So let's invest, for
Hmm.
example. So I think there's a bit of that. There's a bit of kind of getting to know people and understanding what
Yes.
motivators are. So I feel really passionate about that. Getting to know the people that work with me, understanding what are their motivators. Is it their kids? Is it their car? What is it? Right? So let's really kind of get behind that and understand why they're at work in the first place. Is it that they love entrepreneurship? Is it that they love care? What is it? So I think that's really important, understanding someone's motivation, because your motivation and my motivation might be two different things. And invariably, probably not going to be money, because after a certain point, that's fine, right? So what's the real kind of crux of it? And even if it is money, what is that money for? Is it the mortgage, or is it a new suit? What is it? That's really kind of get under the hood. So that's the first part. The second part of it, Alex, I think is really having a system, an operating system within the business. So as I said earlier, we use EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, set up by Gino Wickman, based on traction. And what that means is on a weekly basis, we are there saying, right, okay, what have we done? Where are we going to in 7 days? And it's clear. And then we run it really clearly every week. And then we set it up on a quarterly and annually and a 10-year and so on. And it's like, well, here it is. Because actually, if we go point, shoot, we can get into the business on a weekly basis. Say, this is the biggest problem that we've got in the business this week. Let's fix it. Let's get that done. Let's move on. And then 52 times in a year, if we do that, we will fix the 52 biggest problems in the business and move on. And it means that people are heard, their issues are dealt with, we're fixing problems, we're able to kind of just keep moving, but also they've got really clear goals on a weekly basis. And I think that,
Right.
where you've got a sedate leader, the whole business gets sleepy, right? And people within the business get sleepy, because actually we're not really thinking about X, we're not talking about Y. I see my team as an R&D team. Like, hey, try different tools, let's try different systems. Hey, let's, we're doing this thing with charity, right? Great, let's try 3 different events. What's working, right? Cool, let's lean into that more.
Right, and you need to build a culture of vulnerability in a good way, because especially if you approach your team as an R&D, you need to create that space that, as you mentioned very early on in the podcast, that like they just ignore about failure. Like, who cares? No, we don't even talk about it in a good way, and that people are able to be vulnerable, fail, do mistakes, and then learn, and because that's how you would produce a good development in a way. And that's not easy as a leader to do, because you yourself are also a bit afraid oftentimes to be vulnerable. Um, but it's a challenging equilibrium
It is. I think,
as a leader.
you can make the same mistake once, right? But if you keep making the same mistake, then we've got to have a management discussion.
Mhm.
Actually, you making the mistake of having this interview with me and not clicking record. Great, you can do that once. As a business owner, I'm like, great. What do we learn? Let's all,
Mhm.
enjoy the moment here, laugh that bloody hell, Alex, and click record. But if anyone else does that same mistake again after we've talked about it, we've learned it, we've dissected it, it's not cool. Because then it's not a
Mhm.
mistake. That is just laziness within the business. So we've got to fix that, right? And I
Right.
think it's learning from not only your own mistake, but everyone else's. And that's
Mhm.
great, because then those mistakes become part of the R&D process. But yeah,
I re-
you're very right. There is a level of vulnerability, but I think, I've been, when I was growing up, my parents had shops, and so,
Mhm.
and they were really in the trenches, and it was, the way that they worked in the shops with the workers there and so on. And I saw all of it, and I was involved in that. And I really think about it, and I think, gosh, what that really taught me in a very active way was servant leadership. Because actually, if there's a problem, really the problem in the business is me. Because either if I've allowed some corrosion to continue, that's my fault. If we haven't hit
Right.
numbers because I haven't pivoted fast enough, that's my fault. Rather than blaming everyone around us, let's look internally. What could I have done different? And then do that. Because great, I can bang you over the head all day long for not filming enough podcasts. But actually, why didn't I have that conversation 3 months ago and say, hey, look, have you got a system on this? Are you doing one a week, or what are we doing here? Do you have some buffers? Right. am I asking the right questions? And maybe you're not the right guy for the podcast. And so we're like, okay, great. So does Alex have a space in this business? Does he get it? Does he want it? Does he have capacity to deal with it? You know? And if any one of those answers is a no, maybe Alex isn't right for the business. That's okay. To have the kind conversation and move him on and get the next person in and keep running, right?
100%, 100%. Got a bit, felt a bit subconscious during that speech. I was like, did I press record? So you really got into my skin, Amrit, there. But I did press
I
record.
can see it says recording. I checked before I said it, right?
I was like, oof, okay. No, but 100%, 100%. And it's a sense of ownership, essentially, right? And again, even more in an industry like the franchisor franchisee, that like it's really a sense of an ownership that you need also within your organization, but also within the extended network. So 100%. Um, Amir, as we end this episode, so in the Inner Wonder podcast, how we go about it is that in every episode we have what we call a muse. And muses, according to ancient Greek mythology, were sources of inspiration for people to write plays or uh, just a source of inspiration. So, for our podcast today and for our episode, and for the topics we touched upon, leadership and creating teams and entrepreneurial journey, you are the muse for us to discover this and for all the thinkers listening in. Um, but I wanted to ask you, and I know you've mentioned briefly your dad earlier on, but I want to ask you who or what, maybe a movie or a book or a person or something, has been your muse in your life and in your journey.
I think, for me, it's really interesting. My dad, very much early doors, and in my, more adult life, it's probably my wife. She's somebody that I'll go to for advice, and she'll help me understand things. Also, she doesn't get caught up in my hype at all. As one of my team members said, she's great. She's amazing. She's your biggest troll, right? So, and she's just steady and very honest and gets a measure of people very quickly. I think that's been very interesting for me and very important for entrepreneurs to have someone real in their life like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Amrit. It was great having you here, and all the best with your journey and all your growth
Thank
endeavors. It was great to
Mine.
have you.